Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Studio GDT Reviews. Tonight I'm excited to start part one of a two-part series in a RyanSword custom project that I'm bringing to you in the hopes that you get as much enjoyment about this project as I did. We're going to be looking at tonight a custom 1060 differentially hardened Kissaki-Moroha Zukuri. This specific sword I'm going to call Hokusai's Little Crow Circle, the true Kogarasu-Maru. And if you'd like to find out what I mean by that and the inspiration behind the design, the research that went into it, please stay tuned to the end of this review and click the link to part two, where you can kind of see the provenance that was researched and the detective work that went into finding out as close as possible what did the Kogarasu-Maru actually look like, because you see that name pop up a lot. So in kicking this off, let's talk about that for a moment. A lot of times you're going to see swords called Kogarasu-Maru, but in reality what they are is they are Kissaki-Moroha Zukuri, which is a unique shape of Tachi that existed in the transition between straight blades to what we know as kind of the curved Tachi shape, and then eventually the Katana. So the actual extant Kissaki-Moroha Zukuri are extremely old. However, there were plenty of reproductions that were made over time, honoring those and, for, I guess, skill tests and assessments and whatnot. But the actual oldest extant Kissaki-Moroha Zukuri is the Kogarasu-Maru, the Little Crow Circle. So this project was based on taking as much information as that we could find and building a sword that could duplicate that. Why did we want to do this? Well, RyanSword really loves making custom swords for people. It is true that it is a lot more cost effective for these sword manufacturers to crank out pattern swords by the thousands. Quality control is easier to have. You can have much less failed blade attempts. Prices will go down. But at the same time, there's something to be said for a craftsman and craftspeople that enjoy making custom swords. Not all manufacturers like making custom swords. They'll do it because you're the customer and that's what you want. Some will even be very upfront with you about this, but they would much rather you pick something off the shelf that they've got the QC under control on because they've made 1,000 of them and away they go. And sometimes you can feel like your custom order is maybe a bit off-putting, or maybe, they're a bit annoyed about some of the things that you were requesting. I've had a few custom swords made by RyanSword, and one thing that I really love about that with them is that they truly enjoy doing it. They get excited about it with you. If you tell them you're going to use it for a specific purpose and some part of your design doesn't make sense, they will give you some feedback on that, which I appreciate. But if you're firm, you can tell them, nope, this is how I want it. And they'll say, sure, you're the customer. The customer is always right. And they will build it for you, and they will be happy to do so. And you can see it in their posts on Facebook and whatnot. They really love working custom swords. So that's enough talking about why we did this. Let's look at the actual custom sword itself. And then I do hope that you stick around for part two, which goes in the detail about all the weird detective work that we did to come up with this design and where it came from. So without further ado, here we go.
First, the disclaimers. I'm not a professional martial artist, nor am I a professional sword reviewer. I'm simply a practitioner and an enthusiast. Some of the swords reviewed are sent free of charge as review samples. Others are purchased with my own funds. Regardless of how I obtain them, the review remains the same. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. My opinions are just that, mine alone. I'm bound to get things wrong from time to time. The hope is that when I get something right, that can potentially help you in your own journey. The Tachi features an overall length of just over 41 inches, with a Nagasa right at exactly 27 inches. The curvature of the Tsuka was greater than RyanSword's standard models, and they executed it flawlessly. The brass kashira features an elegant and tasteful floral motif. Real Samegawa is used in a full wrap type scenario with cotton ito. No Hishigami is present. Brass manuki that mimic the historical counterpart were able to be sourced from RyanSword's standard parts bin, and they do the part exactly as we intended. Even though no Hishigami was used, the ito was ridiculously tight on this, and I may be wrong, but I would imagine it would be more difficult to wrap with the curvature that it had on it. So whoever they had doing it that day was definitely on point with their skill set, because this thing is rock solid, significantly better than some I've seen with Hishigami. The brass tsuba was selected to be as close as possible to the original design, but it is a single piece as opposed to a multi-piece. From the kashira to the fuchi to the tsuba, everything looks cohesive and like it belongs together. It took me a minute to wrap my brain around the shape of the Tsuka itself. It seemed like it would feel odd in the hands, but it actually felt surprisingly deft. Sword alignment in the saya was fantastic, and the hibaki fit was nice and tight. The koiguchi and hanger fittings, along with the remainder of the fittings on the saya, were all brass and of high quality with sharp casting. There was a little bit of damage to the saya where they were put on, but it didn't bother me much. I know I say this every single time, but this is truly the best part when we get to the blade, because the polishing work on this and the care taken in the hamon and the bohi is just absolutely incredible. The hibaki on this was actually very impressive to me. The design on it was precise and tight. Sometimes it looks like they're done with a chisel, a very large chisel. The fit was also surprisingly tight on it across all angles. It was nice and tight along the backside and along the flats and down toward the mune. So it did not feel like a one-off hibaki. The alignment of everything was nice and straight as well. When I first saw this sword in person, the shape of it was absolutely wild to me. It has such a defined crescent shape, and when you take a look at this video here and the sword is extended and you can see the full length of the blade along with the tsuka, you can see how much of a boomerang this thing kind of looks at, yet it still feels right in the hand, oddly enough. Now, the polish is where this sword absolutely shines. No pun intended on that. It is a 1060 differentially hardened blade. We went with 1060 so that the high-end polish really would stand out and show you some features, some characteristics in what is otherwise just mono steel. It's not folded, but we were still able to bring out a lot of different activity on this, from the hamon all the way up to the shinogi. So you can see here that this is just a true work of art. The polishing in the he is on point, all the way to the edge. It's got a mirror finish in certain areas where it's burnished. It's just absolutely gorgeous to look at and very difficult to photograph. So we're still working on figuring that out, but you can truly see how much of a work of art this sword is. So it absolutely can cut and will cut. In fact, it would cut like a laser beam, I surmise, but I'm kind of nervous, right? I would hate to damage such a beautiful polish, and this is more of an art sword. But if you are interested in getting something that looks this good, there's so many different ways you can do it, and RyanSword would be more than happy to accommodate your requests. One thing of note, the Tachikaze on this is absolutely insane. This is with one-handed crap cuts. When you actually swing this thing with proper form, it sounds like a jaguar.
And there's Hokusai's Little Crow Circle, or the true Kogarasu-Maru. Am I going to use this in class? Absolutely not. Am I going to throw my leg over a horse and hang this thing down and take out some infantry? Not. Is it a display piece and a talking piece? Absolutely. Could it be used if it needed to be used? Sure. Can it cut? Yeah, it sure can. But realistically, this was an exercise in custom sword making. Can the manufacturer do it? Can we work together to come up with a theme that encapsulates some artwork, some other stuff, and what does the end result look like? I'm very happy about this. It's my first Tachi that I've ever had. I've always liked the look of them, but this has a special place in my heart just because of all the process that went into it. So I hope you enjoyed looking through the sword and seeing the excellent work that RyanSword did on the sword. And please, if you've got 15 minutes or so, click that link to part 2 and take a look at the background on this, because it is actually pretty interesting when you look at it and think of the curved samurai sword that we know of, and the Kogarasu-Maru being pretty much the first example that exists that nobody can see. It's there somewhere, but none of us can go walk up to the museum and take a look at it. So we've got to do some detective work and figure out what it looks like and paint those pictures for ourselves, along with a little bit of myth and wonder and legend rolled into one. So thank you for tuning into this lengthy, rambly episode. I hope you enjoyed it. We got plenty more things to come. Please do me a favor. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you like the channel. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your thoughts and the feedback, and have a wonderful weekend.
Studio GDT reviews are made possible by the following sponsors: